The sun had just begun to rise over the jagged hills of Rio de Janeiro. Its golden light spilled through the narrow alleyways of Complexo do Alameo, illuminating the maze of corrugated rooftops and peeling walls painted in bold colors. The favela was already stirring. Vendors arranged crates of fruit, children kicked deflated footballs, and the scent of freshly baked pão de queijo drifted lazily from open windows. Among the noise and motion, there was a girl who walked quietly. Her name was Laila. At 13, she had the eyes of someone far older. They carried the weight of secrets, yet she smiled. Always. A soft, unshaken smile, like a well-worn mask that never cracked. Laila lived with her mother, Rosa, in a single-room flat perched halfway up the hillside. Rosa worked 2 jobs, cleaning houses in the morning and working a stall by night. Her hands were worn, her back bent, but her pride kept her standing. Laila rarely saw her. Breakfast was often a single piece of bread, carefully wrapped and left beside the pillow. Most mornings, Laila skipped breakfast and handed the bread to a boy even younger than her. His name was Caio, a neighbor's son whose father had disappeared and whose mother floated through life like a ghost. Laila always said she was full, though her stomach twisted in protest. At school, Laila was known as the quiet girl who never complained. She wore the same faded shoes every day and never asked questions in class. Yet, whenever someone cried or felt left out, she was the first to reach out. Her classmates often whispered about her, that she must be a saint, or perhaps just strange. But no one knew that Laila had learned long ago that people feel safer around those who smile. The smile had started when she was 7, the night her father left. He had stormed out during a rainstorm, shouting, slamming the door behind him. That night, Laila had crawled into her mother's bed, held her hand, and said everything would be fine, smiling through the tears she refused to show. Now, the smile was a habit, stitched into her face like thread in fabric. It was how she moved through hunger, loneliness, and silence. Rosa never asked how she was, but sometimes, when Laila thought her mother had fallen asleep, Rosa would whisper, "Meu anjo." My little angel. One afternoon, as Laila sat on a cracked concrete step overlooking the city below, she saw an ambulance weaving its way up the hill. It was rare to see one up here. The roads were too narrow, and emergencies were usually met with indifference. But this time, it stopped just meters from her door. Curious, Laila followed the sound of voices and found that old Senor Bento had collapsed in his home. The ambulance team was arguing. One of them, a woman in uniform, was struggling to keep calm. The stretcher would not fit through the narrow doorway. Without thinking, Laila stepped forward. "You need to turn it sideways. Just here, there's a ledge. I know the space. I can help." The paramedic glanced at her, startled. She looked no older than 13. But there was certainty in her voice. Together, they maneuvered the stretcher inside. The paramedic raised an eyebrow at her. "You live here?" Laila nodded. "And you are?" "Laila," she said. "I am just helping." The woman smiled. "You should think about working in healthcare someday. You are calm under pressure." Laila blinked. No one had ever said that to her before. Not in those words. Her smile widened, not because she was hiding, but because something had stirred inside her. A spark. A thread of purpose. Later that evening, when the sun dipped behind the hills and the city began to hum with music and noise, Laila sat beside her mother in silence. Rosa looked tired, her eyelids heavy. "How was your day, Filha?" she asked, barely audible. Laila hesitated, then answered as she always did. "It was fine." But this time, she added something more. "I helped someone. An old man. With the ambulance. They said I was calm." Rosa opened her eyes, just for a second, and smiled faintly. "You always have been." And for the first time in a long time, Laila felt the smile on her face was not hiding anything. It was simply hers. It was nearly midnight when Laila woke to the sound of rain tapping against the corrugated roof. The wind slipped through the cracked window, bringing with it the scent of wet dust and something metallic. She turned slowly and found her mother still awake, staring at the ceiling. "May," Laila whispered. "Did you sleep at all?" Rosa didn't answer at first. Then she sighed, her breath trembling in the dark. I dreamt of your father, she said. He was standing outside in the rain, smiling. Laila stayed quiet. She knew that when the past returned like this, it was better to listen than to speak. Rosa turned to her daughter, her eyes glistening in the faint light. You're smiling in the dream too. The same smile you always wear now. It frightened me. Why? Because it looked too perfect. Like you were hiding something even from me. Laila didn't reply. She reached out and took her mother's hand. It was cold. I'm not hiding anything, she said. But even as she spoke, she wasn't sure if it was true. The next morning, the rain had passed, but the ground was slick and the air heavy. At school, the principal made an announcement. There would be a volunteer health fair in the community center next week. Doctors, nurses, and even students from the university would be offering checkups and health education. Laila's heart quickened. She had never seen a real medical student up close. The moment school ended, she ran to the center and begged the organizer to let her help. The woman, amused but impressed by Laila's eagerness, agreed. Laila was assigned to assist with the registration table. She spent the next few days learning names, sorting papers, and watching every move the medical team made. One student, Sophia, noticed her curiosity. You ask a lot of questions, Sophia said, smiling. Are you planning to become a doctor? Laila hesitated, then nodded. Maybe. I like helping people. Sophia crouched to her level. Then keep watching. And never stop asking. That's how it begins. Laila's smile widened, but this time, it wasn't to cover hunger or fear. It was something else entirely. It was hope. Notebook, its cover worn but still firm. Here. Use this instead, she said. Laila opened it slowly. The pages smelled faintly of ink and paper left too long in the sun. She wrote her name inside with care, then paused. I've never had one just for me, she murmured. From that day on, the notebook became her secret world. She filled it with sketches of organs, lists of medical terms she overheard, and questions she was too afraid to ask aloud. Each page built a silent library of her hunger to learn. One evening, Kaio found her on the steps, writing furiously. Is that for school? He asked, curious. No, she replied. It's for later. He tilted his head. Later when? Laila looked up at the sky. When I'm someone else. That same week, the center announced a speech competition. The topic, what I want for my future. Laila's stomach tightened at the thought. Speaking in front of a crowd? But the notebook burned in her bag like a promise. When her name was called, she walked onto the stage with shaking knees and her smile locked in place. Her hands trembled as she opened the notebook. But as her voice echoed through the room, something unexpected happened. The audience quieted. Eyes met hers. No one laughed. She spoke of dreams. Of hospitals where children did not have to cry alone. Of doctors who listened. Of hope that did not depend on money. When she finished, the room was still. Then came applause. Loud. Real. Rosa waited for her outside, tears on her cheeks. You made them see you, she whispered. Laila held the notebook close. Maybe they finally saw what I've been hiding. Weeks passed, and the health fair ended. The notebook grew heavier with writing. Sophia returned to university, but not before giving Laila one last gift, a brochure for a scholarship program at a preparatory school across the city. It's for girls like you. You have to write an essay. That's all. Laila stared at the paper like it was a map to another world. She wrote late into the night, crouched beside a flickering lamp. Her essay was raw, honest. She wrote of the hill, the hunger, the hiding. But she also wrote about smiles, about the power of hope. Weeks passed. One evening, a letter arrived. It's from the school, Rosa said, pressing it into Laila's hands. She opened it slowly. The words danced on the page. Congratulations. You have been selected. Laila screamed. Then laughed. Then cried. But excitement gave way to worry. The school required a bus fare she could not afford. Uniforms. Books. A meal plan. Rosa began to work extra nights. Laila took cleaning jobs on weekends. Kaio offered his coin collection to help. Everyone gave something. The morning of her first day, Rosa pressed her daughter's shoulders. "Make them remember you," she said. And Laila walked away from the hill, wearing the same smile, but this time, it pointed toward the future. The school was nothing like Laila imagined. Glass walls, smooth corridors, echoing silence. The girls wore perfume and spoke in soft, fast English. She felt like a paper boat in an ocean. "Where are you from?" one girl asked. "Complexo," Laila answered. "Oh," the girl said. "That's brave." But Laila didn't want to be brave. She wanted to belong. She studied harder than ever. She sat at the front. She stayed behind for extra tutoring. But the gap was real. Her classmates had private maths lessons and tutors. One day, a teacher caught her crying in the library. "Do you know what makes you special, Laila?" she asked. Laila shook her head. "You already know how to fight. The rest is just learning to breathe." Laila never forgot those words. That night, she wrote in her notebook, underlined 3 times. "I will not let this world shrink me." Halfway through her first year at the new school, Laila fell behind in chemistry. Equations blurred. Numbers refused to make sense. One morning, the teacher returned her test with a quiet frown. "See me after class." Laila stared at the red marks. It felt like failure. After class, she waited by the desk. Her stomach turned. "You're smart, Laila," the teacher said. "But smart is not enough when you are tired. You work too much. You need rest." Laila almost laughed. Rest was a luxury. She worked weekends, helped Rosa each evening. She hadn't known rest in years. That night, walking home, her legs gave out. She collapsed near the bus stop. A passing vendor found her and called for help. At the hospital, the diagnosis was simple: exhaustion, dehydration, anemia. The doctor looked at Rosa, then at Laila. "You need to eat more than hope." She stayed overnight. And for the first time in months, she slept without dreams. When she woke, Sophia was there. She had heard what happened. "I brought something," Sophia said, pulling out a small badge. It read, "Future Healer. You're already becoming who you were meant to be. But even healers need healing." Laila smiled, weakly but sincerely. The flame had dimmed, but it had not gone out. One summer night, gunfire echoed across the hill. It wasn't unusual, but this time it was close. Too close. The market stalls were torn down. The school on the hill closed for a week. Laila returned to Complexo and found Kaio shaking in a corner. "They came into our street," he whispered. "I thought you were gone." She held him tightly. She knew fear, but this was different. This was helplessness. Later that week, her school hosted a peace assembly. Students were asked to speak on violence. Laila stood before the microphone. Her smile wavered. "We are told to be quiet, to be grateful, to survive. But surviving is not living. And smiling is not silence." The room fell still. "I smile not because I am fine, but because I must move forward. Smiling is how I fight." When she stepped off the stage, the applause was not polite. It was thunderous. It began with an email. A representative from a university in Sao Paulo had seen a video of Laila's speech. They wanted to offer her a place in their summer program for future medical students. Rosa dropped the phone when she heard. Sao Paulo? That's another world. Laila packed her bag with care. Notebook. Badge. One pair of shoes. When the bus pulled away from the hill, she watched it grow smaller in the window. At the university, everything was bigger. The labs, the buildings, the dreams. She met students from across Brazil. Some were like her. Most were not. But in every conversation, she carried her story. "You're from Complexo?" a student asked. "Yes. And I'm not the only one. I'm just the one you've met." She returned home with new books, a certificate, and a fire burning stronger than ever. On her 17th birthday, Laila received 2 letters. One was from the university in Sao Paulo. Full scholarship. Medicine. The other was from a local clinic in Rio. They wanted her to start an apprenticeship immediately. Paid. Practical. Rosa stood in the kitchen, quiet. What do you want, Filha? Layla stared at the letters. I want both. But I think I know which one is mine. She took the letter from Sao Paulo and placed it gently beside her notebook. The one that held her first dreams. She would leave. She would learn. She would return. And when she did, she would bring more than a smile. 3 years later, the bus rolled back into Complexo.
The streets had changed.
Some walls had fresh paint. Others bore bullet holes. But the children still played football. Kaio, now taller, ran to greet her. You're back, he grinned. She nodded. For good. She opened the door to a small clinic near the community center. The sign outside was hand-painted, Clinic Laila. Inside, she placed the badge on the desk. Above it, her notebook, now worn but never abandoned. That day, she saw her first patient. A girl with wide eyes and trembling hands. I'm scared, the girl said. Layla smiled. Warmly.
Calmly.
That's all right. I've been there. And as she reached for the girl's hand, Layla realized her smile was no longer a mask. It was a promise.